Gabbard, who is now somehow a shill for the conservative Zionist right in this country, basically said that equating Trump to Hitler. Now remember, Hitler did make a speech very similar to a Hitler speech about rounding up liberals, communists, and fascists. Okay? I made a video about that. But the thing is, Tulsi Gabbard is, she had made a statement on Fox News. I didn't watch it yet. I will. But first I want to show that at one point in time, Tulsi Gabbard was not a shill for the Zionist media. Okay? But, so I'm going to show some of that stuff, before she became a shill for the Zionists. And I'm also going to point out, Donald Trump, to equate Donald Trump to Hitler is an egregious comparison, not because of Hitler being who Hitler was, the former chancellor of Germany, etc., but because the fact is that Hitler was a decorated veteran and somebody that suffered a great deal to get where he was and worked very hard to get where he was, whereas Trump is a pampered crybaby. Okay? And I'm not at all supporting Hitler. I'm not supporting Hitler at all or trying to make Hitler look great at all. But by comparison to Trump, we have to take things in context. Trump is a pampered crybaby that falsified a foot condition to get out of serving in the Vietnam War. And Hitler was somebody that volunteered to serve, not only volunteered to serve in one of the most dangerous aspects of the war, which was as a courier. Donald Trump does not hold a candle to Mr. Hitler. He certainly doesn't hold a candle to Mr. Hitler in leadership. Mr. Hitler took a country that was on the verge of collapse and turned it into the most powerful country on the face of the earth. Mr. Trump took a country that was the most powerful country on earth and turned it into a banana republic by appointing his crazy son-in-law and crazy daughter as his advisors, and everything was very banana republican-y and very third worldish with the way everything was run. He destroyed the economy by with Chinese communist style wealth redistribution plots. He tried to scam, the whole platinum plan would be what he was going to implement. He let tens of thousands of dangerous criminals back onto the streets. These are things that are not at all similar to Mr. Hitler or Mr. Stalin or Mr. Mussolini or any of the other politicians that Trump has been unfortunately compared to. Mr. Hitler, Mr. Mussolini, Mr. Mao Zedong, these people, Mr. Stalin, Mr. Lenin, these people were actual leaders. Whether they were nice people or not is a different story. But Trump is not only not a nice person, he's a horrifically bad leader and somebody that did everything he could to avoid military service. So let's hear what Ms. Gabbard has to say before Ms. Gabbard became a shill for the Zionists.
Defense Secretary Leon Panetta see the situation playing out in the wake of last weekend's attacks on the Saudi oil fields.
If we don't act, or if we don't act strong enough, it's guaranteed that Iran will continue.
I think it is going to demand us.
Criticizes the president for this tweet, which said that the U.S. is, quote, locked and loaded, and that we are waiting to hear from the Saudi.
Now let's hear Ms. Gabbard explain why Trump is a traitor to our country. This is Ms. Gabbard prior to her becoming a shill for the Zionists.
Criticizes the president for this tweet, which said that the U.S. is, quote, locked and loaded, and that we are waiting to hear from the Saudi kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of this attack and under what terms we would proceed. That was from the other day. So then after that,
So you're basically having Trump right there admitting that he is taking orders directly from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He is giving the orders of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to our military, is what Trump just said in that tweet.
Pompeo made it clear that the United States believes that it was Iranian weapons that were used. There's a picture of them on the New York Post today, and that the attack came from the north, not from the south, where the Houthi rebels in Yemen originally claimed responsibility. Gabbard did not mince words. She has fired back at the president on Twitter this way.
For you to think that you can pimp out our proud servicemen and women to the Prince of Saudi Arabia is disgraceful. Your words and actions are a betrayal of my brothers and sisters in uniform, the American people, and our Constitution. For you to think that you can pimp out our proud servicemen and women to the Prince of Saudi Arabia is disgraceful. Your words and actions are a betrayal of my brothers and sisters in uniform, the American people, and our Constitution. My fellow service members and I, we are not your prostitutes. You are not our pimp.
The Congresswoman from Hawaii joins me now. Those are obviously very strong words directed at the president, the commander-in-chief, Congresswoman Gabbard. Do you stand by those?
Absolutely, I do.
Do you stand by those?
Absolutely, I do.
Do you stand by those?
Absolutely, I do. Trump's intent was made very clear with that tweet. As a soldier, I took an oath, as well as a member of Congress. But as a soldier, I took an oath to support and defend our Constitution, to protect and defend the American people, not the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, not any other foreign power. Now, if for some reason that's not what Trump meant, then he should come out and say that's not what I meant and clarify it. But he hasn't done that. I think.
Well, it does seem like a rather literal interpretation, and I don't know. So perhaps that is what he meant. But let's listen to what the Pentagon said today, because I think that this might shed some light on sort of where this is coming from. Watch this.
We're going to allow the Saudis to make the declarations on where they believe the tax came from and the ultimate responsibility.
I mean, when I read it, that was more the take that I had on it, that this is an ally, and I know that you don't agree that this is a good ally, but sometimes not all allies are perfect. It's obviously a very complicated relationship, but that because the attack was on them, there would be discussions about where it came from, and then discussions about how we would respond. Not that we would take orders from Saudi Arabia about how we would respond.
Well, a couple of points here. First of all, I think Trump's tweet was very clear. And if he didn't mean what he said, then he should clarify and actually say what he means. As President of the United States, you've got to be very careful about the words that you're using because they carry a lot of impact. Secondly, this is about something bigger than just a complex relationship with Saudi Arabia or having an ally who is not perfect. We're talking about a country that is continuing to directly and indirectly support al-Qaeda. Now, we just observed the 18th anniversary of the day that al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11, the day that evil visited our country, killing thousands of Americans. So I don't take lightly people who say, well, Saudi Arabia, yeah, they're not that great, but, we need them. Look, Saudi Arabia is continuing to support our enemy, al-Qaeda, in places like Yemen and Syria. What to speak of what they're doing every year, spending billions of dollars to propagate this extreme Wahhabi ideology that's fueling terrorist groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda.
I think there are a lot of people who agree with you, and there are a lot of people who probably disagree with you, but also, take your points to heart in terms of that explanation. But there are also people who, look back at the things that you have said in the past and sort of see that there are kind of two camps in the Middle East, that you have Iran and Syria with the backing of Russia, and then you have the United States and Israel and the Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So they see you more in the camp that is on the side of Iran and Syria, and they question that, Congresswoman Gabbard. What do you say to them?
Yeah, they're wrong. They're wrong. I'm not in any of those different camps. I am in one camp and one camp alone. It's the camp of the United States of America and the American camp and one camp alone. It's the camp of the United States of America and the American.
And that's the thing, is it's become a crime now to be on the side of your own country. And that's what's kind of sad, is Ms. Gabbard has now switched to being a Zionist. But the point is that Americans need to be for America. America needs to be for Americans. That's the bottom line.
Camp, and one camp alone. It's the camp of the United States of America and the American people. And I took an oath and I promised to be willing to put my life on the line to serve and protect our country, to protect the people of our country. So that is my sole focus. It has been and will continue to be.
And we admire that, and we thank you for your service. Absolutely. So I guess the next question is, what would you do? I mean, we've had enormous provocation from Iran. They have put explosives on tankers. They've shot down a drone that was $130 million by some report, American drone. They've taken sailors into custody. So what do you recommend?
Well, I think we've got to look at this situation for what it is. This provocation, as you put it, did not just come from out of nowhere. It is a retaliation, and it's a retaliation against the extreme sanctions that are on Iran. That's basically making it impossible for them to sell their oil around the world. So we've just got to be clear-eyed about what's really happening and how, if we continue down this course, this path we are on, I think you heard former Secretary Pineda allude to this, that we will see a cycle of retaliation, tit for tat, just continuing to go forward and escalate that can only lead to
so lift the sanctions. I'm almost out of time, but what would you do was the question.
As president right now, what I would do is I would re-enter the Iran nuclear deal to prevent Iran from continuing to move forward and building a nuclear weapon that puts us and the world further at risk. And number two, end those crippling sanctions.
Okay, I mean, that's exactly what they want.
Every day that we don't do.
All right, the president has already ordered increased sanctions following that attack that the Iranians were now apparently behind, at least our intelligence says that, on Saudi Arabia. Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard, though, wonders whether the president is doing...
So I'm going to let Tulsi again further explain her views on Trump's mindless support of Saudi Arabia. Here we go.
Our country's bidding or Saudi Arabia's, it's hard to say. Congressman, very good to have you.
Thanks, Neil. It's good to see you.
What surprised folks is the degree to which you hammered that charge at the president, which you said you are not our pimp. What did you mean by that?
Well, let's just make sure that we're on the same page here and recognize the context of what I was responding to that the president tweeted out. And I just want to read you what he said in that tweet, saying that, quote, "We're waiting to hear from the kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of this attack and under what terms we would..."
So what you have to understand is what Ms. Gabbard is pointing out here is that Mr. Trump is literally admitting in a tweet to taking orders. He is taking orders from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is what Trump is doing as President of the United States.
As to who they believe was the cause of this attack and under what terms we would proceed. Look, Neil, I'm a soldier, and I took an oath as a soldier as well as a member of Congress to support and defend our Constitution of the United States, to serve the American people, and to... It's a huge disgrace to hear our commander-in-chief basically put us in a position, put us, the American people, our men and women in uniform, our military assets, in a position where we are servants of the Saudi kingdom, standing by and awaiting their orders on how we should proceed. This is an outrageous
was he saying that, Congresswoman, as much as trying? I understand what you're saying, but was he saying that as much as, they're looking into this? They're not marching orders here. They're saying they're trying to ascertain who was behind that attack, and that is what I think he was waiting on.
Well, if Trump didn't mean what he said when he tweeted that out, that, we've got to see under what terms we would proceed, then he needs to clarify what he said and actually say what he meant. He's the President of the United States. He's the Commander-in-Chief of the strongest military in the world, and I think he really needs to be clear. So far, this was said a couple of days ago, right. He has not issued any kind of clarification, and so all we can presume is that he said what he meant in that tweet.
All right. He has not responded to your allegations or even tweeted a response. But what you did say is, I've never engaged in hateful rhetoric against you or your family, never will. But you're offering our military assets to the dictator of Saudi Arabia to use as he sees fit is a betrayal of my brother and sisters in uniform who are ready to give our lives for our country, not the Islamist dictator of Saudi Arabia. The question I have for you then, Congresswoman, if you become president of the United States and Saudi Arabia were attacked like it was here and apparently by Iran, would you not intervene?
I would do what's in the best interest of our country. And as a soldier, I see these things very clearly, seeing what is our goal, what is our objective. And as it relates to Iran, we have two primary objectives. Number one is to make sure that Iran is no longer moving forward towards increasing and building their nuclear weapons capability, as they currently are since the Iran nuclear deal was torn up. And number two, to prevent, this all-out shooting war with Iran that it appears we are headed towards. This is important for two reasons. Number one is obviously we've got to make sure we're keeping the American people safe, keep that at the forefront. And we can accomplish these objectives by understanding and realizing that the current strategy has failed. It's not helping us achieve that objective, and therefore we need to re-enter the Iran nuclear agreement and get rid of these crippling economic sanctions that are continuing to escalate this war against Iran.
Well, Iran has been doing this kind of stuff with or without sanctions, right? With or without a deal, right? So
That's
it doesn't
not
seem
true.
to matter the occasion or the deal,
true.
right? They're provocative behavior in the Strait of Hormuz and elsewhere, right?
While the Iran nuclear deal was in place, Iran was found to be in compliance, both by our own intelligence agencies, the IAEA, other countries' intelligence agencies. They were complying with that deal, and it was making it so that they were not moving forward towards building a nuclear weapon. Now that that deal has been thrown in the trash, Iran is continuing to move forward.
Well, the nuclear deal notwithstanding, they have always been provocative, right? So I guess what I would ask you, would you as president then ignore that provocation, deal or no deal? Would you work on behalf with the Saudis? Do you like the Saudis more or less than Iran? What?
It's not about who you like or who you don't like. It's just about, once again, focusing on our objective of keeping the American people safe.
And this is, again, the problem you have with Trump-tards, okay? The problem with Trump-tards, and to a lesser extent Democrats, is they're worried about is their party's objectives being met, not are the objectives of the country and the citizenry of the country being met. And that's the biggest problem. And the sad truth is, Tulsi Gabbard used to put the interests of this republic and of this republic's people first. Now she's putting her own interests first and supporting Zionism.
It's just happened and transpired over the last few days
And
here. It didn't just
Trumpism.
pop up out of nowhere. So we can't look at this in isolation away from what has been happening over the last several months that really was kicked off by President Trump walking away from and throwing that nuclear deal in the trash, increasing crippling economic sanctions that are really hurting the people of Iran, most of all, designating their military as a terrorist organization, deploying more of our troops to the region. So there's a number of things that have pushed us the world to this point where we are today.
So let me ask you, do you recognize Mohammed bin Salman as the leader of Saudi Arabia? Now, I know he was behind a lot of signals point that he was behind the killing of that Washington Post journalist a little over a year ago, but he is still in charge. And others have said you can't pick and choose your leaders of countries you might not like. It is what it is. Would you talk to him? Would you deal with him? Would you, on an attack like this, do something in concert with him?
I think it's important under these and other circumstances to be ready and to have the willingness to talk to leaders of other countries. And yes, I would meet with the leader of Saudi Arabia, as I would meet with the leader of Iran to de-escalate these tensions. And once again, keeping at the forefront what is in the best interest of the United States and how can we best accomplish that objective, which is keeping the American people safe, doing what's in the best interest of our national security. And by pursuing these diplomatic measures, we have the opportunity to then prevent that worst case scenario, which is an all-out shooting conflict war that would cause a devastating cost to the American people, to our troops, countless lives, trillions more dollars, what to speak of the impact and the devastation that would be caused around the region and the world.
All right, so the interpretation I have is that you want to bring back that Iran delegate and move back to that, but it does give a signal here that you're no fan of the Saudi leadership, and many are not, I get that, but more of a fan of the leadership in Iran.
No, I'm a fan of the United States of America. I'm a fan of the American people. And as President and Commander-in-Chief, I would put their interests.
So you're not allowed to be a fan of the American people or the United States of America. You have to either be on the side of the Trumpublicans or the Democrats. Okay, and that's the problem. And unfortunately, Tulsi has become a Trump-publican. She is now a full-fledged Trump-tard. She is fully in support of the Zionist one-state solution at this point.
Above all
Is
else,
it in
putting
our
the well-being
interest
of
for
the
Saudi
American
Arabia?
people.
Is it in our interest for Saudi Arabia to be protected, or its kingdom to be protected, or do you draw a distinction?
Well, let me tell you what is not in our interests is this alliance that has been longstanding between the United States and Saudi Arabia, in spite of the fact that they are directly and indirectly supporting al-Qaeda, the terrorist group that attacked us on 9/11. We just observed the 18th anniversary of that terrible attack on our country in 2001. They are continuing to spend billions of dollars every year propagating this extremist Wahhabi ideology that's fueling the growth of terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and others around the world. They are directly supporting those who pose a threat to our country and to the United States, that threat that we need to defeat.
Is that threat greater than Iran?
Yes, it is.
So Saudi Arabia is more of a problem for us than
Currently,
Iran
Iran
is.
does not pose a direct threat to the United States. We have the opportunity to make sure that we prevent Iran from continuing to move forward towards developing a nuclear weapon. That's where we need to be focused. If I were president right now, that's exactly what I'd be doing. Getting back into that nuclear deal, getting rid of these crippling economic sanctions, and being able to make sure we can move forward in the interests of our national security.
So President Tulsi Gabbard would see Saudi Arabia as a bigger threat to our country than Iran.
What I would like to see is Saudi Arabia ending their support for al-Qaeda, terrorist groups like al-Qaeda.
I'm sorry, that's not what I asked. It's not what I asked.
I know, you're turning my words around.
No. I want to just be very clear. But you have a higher opinion of Iran than you do Saudi Arabia.
No, that's not at all what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm focused on how we can best keep the American people safe, on how we can make sure that we have our national security intact.
And the Saudis are a bigger threat to that safety than Iran. I just want to be clear.
The Saudis are directly supporting the very terrorist group that attacked us on 9/11 and that continue to pose a threat to the American people today.
So if the president were to take action against Iran, with or without Saudi intelligence or help.
So what you need to understand, long story short, Trump is basically, from what Trump's tweet at that time, he is taking orders from a kingdom that is supporting radical Islam, radical Islamic mosques all throughout Europe and the United States, as well as supporting the terrorist group that has attacked us and continues to pose a threat to us. So in a sense, what Ms. Gabbard is explaining is Donald Trump is supporting Al-Qaeda, is what he was doing. And that's what needs to be understood. Yeah, they're trying to bend it all around, but that's the bottom line. Donald Trump supported Al-Qaeda as president of the United States through his behaviors with U.S. foreign policy.
That would be a bad move in your eyes.
That would be a very bad move. It would not serve the interests of the United States. It would cost thousands more of my brothers and sisters in uniform their lives. It would cost us as taxpayers trillions of dollars more. It would make the Iraq war that I served in look like a picnic compared to the cost and the consequence and the devastation that would come about as a result of that war. What to speak of the fact that it would be unconstitutional, given the president would do that without that be unconstitutional.
And this is the thing, too. You have to remember, Trump wants to halt the Constitution. Okay, he's stated that a number of times. He's also tried to supersede the Constitution a number of times. He is against the Constitution. And the sad truth is, many of his supporters don't care. They think that installing Trump as a king is somehow super constitutional.
Be unconstitutional, given the president would do that without that authority coming from Congress.
Now, I want to point this out. This is an article from Election 2020. Trump has mocked the United States military his whole life. Egged on by his father, the U.S. president began expressing contempt. Now, remember, if you read The Art of the Deal he shows in The Art of the Deal his contempt for Americans, particularly white Anglo-Saxon Americans, and his unity with German immigrants, particularly German Jewish immigrants. He even discusses in The Art of the Deal why he believes that the German Jew is superior to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Also, it is noted that the first thing he did when he bought Mar-a-Lago was desegregate it to thumb his nose at the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in the area, and he had Michael Jackson, who, now I'm not saying one way or another about Michael Jackson, but Michael Jackson is thought to have been a pedophile, okay, as was, what's-his-face, Epstein. Both of these people, Michael Jackson and Epstein, were close friends of Donald Trump, okay, and that's known. Okay, but that was his way of thumbing his nose. So he has contempt for Americans who fought in wars as far back as high school. His classmates say, perhaps the 74-year-old retired. Okay, wait. Perhaps no one was less surprised last week when it was reported that U.S. President Donald Trump had called American war dead, meaning U.S. soldiers, men and women that fought in World War II and other wars, losers and suckers, than his former high school classmate George M. White. The 74-year-old retired Army veteran was Trump's superior, the first captain or highest-ranking cadet in Trump's 1964 graduating class at the New York Military Academy. White said he witnessed up-close Trump's contempt for military service, discipline, and tradition, as well as his ungoverned sense of entitlement, all helped along by his father Fred Trump's generous donations to the school. No, those remarks absolutely didn't surprise me in my dealings with him. He was a heartless, obnoxious son of a bitch. Okay, White told the person that's interviewing him, that wrote this article. According to White, the former classmates at the academy, Trump's 5 years there, coupled with the disregard for U.S. military traditions he learned at his father's knee, helps explain a great deal of the president's reported contempt for those who fought, died, and were wounded in America's wars. Okay. According to the Atlantic magazine, during a trip to France to mark the 100th, now remember, this is linked in the description, you can read it yourself, to France to mark the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I.